Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee, Wednesday, June the 9th, 2021, to hear the business as stated on the agenda before us. We start with the election of chairman, and my name is Councillor Jude Scott, and I'm chair of the Licensing Board and the formal person presiding at this meeting today. I therefore ask for a nomination for chair of this subcommittee. May I have a nomination, please?
Councillor Chair, I'd like to nominate yourself as the chair for this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Dion. May I have a seconder, please?
Second. A second.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Decent. Okay, then. So moving on then to our housekeeping, and I will ask our clerk, our licensing clerk, Mrs. Michelle Cutler, to take us through housekeeping. Thank you.
Good morning. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, could everyone please follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the chairman. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the chairman will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top of the screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cutler. Thank you. We now move to apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Farquhar, who Licensing Subcommittee second reserve, but there are no other apologies. So moving on then to declarations of interest, I'll ask each subcommittee member in turn if they have a declaration of interest. So Councillor Norman Decent, any declarations of interest?
No declarations at all, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Decent. Councillor Brian Dion?
Yeah, Chairman, no declaration.
Thank you. And for completeness, I have no declarations of interest either. Moving on to item 4, which is the protocol for public speaking. This is a revised protocol for virtual meetings as required under COVID, and it's been circulated with the agenda sheet. So moving on to our substantive, which is item 5, more the merrier, 68 Kimberley Road, Bournemouth, BH65BY. An application has been received for variation of premises licence for the premises name is more the merrier, 68 Kimberley Road, Bournemouth, BH65BY. This matter is brought before the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. So I'll now ask everybody to introduce themselves and to state their role, and for our members, please, if you'd like to state your ward. So Councillor Norman Decent. Oh, Councillor Decent, you're on mute. If you'd like to unmute your mic.
That is so typical of me.
Thank you. Just start again.
Yeah, Councillor Norman Decent, member of the Licensing Board, and the for Kinston Award as their councillor. I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Councillor Dion. Councillor Dion?
Councillor Brian Dion, Penhill.
Thank you, Councillor Dion. My name is Councillor Jude Scott. I'm Chairman of the Licensing Board and Chairman of the Subcommittee for today's hearing, and my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. I'd like to thank our reserve members who have come with us today. That's Councillor Dove and Councillor Brown, and special thanks to Councillor Brown for subbing for Councillor Farquhar as a second reserve at such a very short notice. As there are 2 hearings this morning, I would ask that both reserves be available in case they're needed for the second hearing. You're welcome to stay for observation or training, and I'm certain Mrs. Cutler will call you if you are needed for the second hearing, should anything happen to the members during the first, which I'm sure it won't. So moving on then to introduce our applicant, we have David Ramsey.
Yes, good morning. My name is David Ramsey. I'm a licensing consultant representing More the Merrier.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. And Mr. Ramsey, we also have Mr. Oxus, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
I'm Mr. Oxus, More the Merrier owner of the shop.
Thank you, Mr. Oxus. And Ezra Oxus, I believe, is your daughter and the applicant. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please, Miss Oxus.
Yes, hi, my name's Ezra Oxus. I am the daughter of Muzaffar and also the premises license holder.
Thank you very much. That's extremely helpful. Okay, moving on then to our responsible authorities. Sergeant Gareth Gosling.
I don't believe that Gareth Gosling is part of this meeting this morning.
Is he not with us? Sergeant Gosling's not with us?
No, he's not.
He's not. Okay, thank you very much. So Louise Busfield?
Yes, I'm the licensing officer with Dorset Police.
Thank you very much, Ms. Busfield. Moving on to our council officers, Sarah Rogers.
Hello, good morning. Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer for BCP Council.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. And Mrs. Linda Cole.
Good morning, it's Linda Cole. I'm Miss Lister and representing the Licensing Subcommittee this morning.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole. And we've already heard from Michelle Cutler, but Mrs. Cutler, if you'd like to introduce yourself formally.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Cutler and I'm your clerk today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cutler. And in addition, there are people beavering away in the background. Our Democratic Services officers are providing technical support to the meeting, but they won't take any part in the meeting. But we certainly need them in the background with regard to keeping the meeting flowing. So just to ask now that all persons who've given notice of their intention to speak have been identified, the process we've just been through, and any person who wishes to withdraw representation or wishes not to speak, identify themselves. No one? Okay, then I'll take this as correct and move on. So I'll now go through the procedure and order of speaking for the hearing as follows. It's fairly simple. The licensing officer will present a report, and there'll be questions of the officer and points of fact by all parties, and the members of the subcommittee will go first. The applicant will then make their application, and there'll be questions of the applicant by all parties, with members of the subcommittee going first. And then responsible authorities, we don't have any other persons with us present, any objections, any objectors. So the responsible authorities will make their representation, and questions of the responsible authorities will be made by members of the subcommittee who will go first. All parties will then be given an opportunity to sum up, and the party who spoke last will go first. I'll then conclude the hearing. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with the legal advisor and clerk present, and notification of subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning the day and the last day in which the hearing is held in accordance with the regulations, which are the new COVID regulations, and that's today's date. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate, and I will ask Mrs. Cole at the appropriate time to advise us with regard to the right of appeal. So I'd like now to ask all present with regard to attendees that they confirm agreement to the proposed procedure or to make representations if they don't. So, Mr. Ramsey, are you content?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Ms. Oxus, are you content?
Yes, I am.
And Mr. Oxus, are you content?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And Louise Busfield?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
And Sarah Rogers?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. So just finally, to remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations, and all questions are to be asked through the chairman, and there will be no cross-examination of parties. So with that all said and understood, we will move then and ask our licensing officer, Mrs. Sarah Rogers, to present her case. Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Thank you very much. The application before you is for variation of the premises licence at More the Merrier, which is a convenience store situated in a residential area, licensed for off sales of alcohol 24 hours a day, each day of the week. Removal of condition 2.11 is requested to enable the applicant's father to resume sales of alcohol at the premises. This is a condition which was imposed on the licence by way of consent order by the Magistrates Court following an appeal against the revocation of the premises licence in 2008, when the licence was first reviewed by Dorset Police. Dorset Police have made representation to this application due to the concerns over the lack of Mr. Oxus's ability to comply with the licence conditions. By way of further background, the subcommittee previously refused the applicant's request for the removal of this condition in July 2020. They were of the view at that time that they had not had sufficient time since the licence was further reviewed by Dorset Police in November 2019. No representations were received from any of the other responsible authorities. As always, should this application be granted and the applicant fails to operate in accordance with the licence and the conditions attached to it, They will be aware that any responsible authority or any other person may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers. And we have the wording just to give reference to members that the wording with regard to the condition is under the executive summary, just for your reference, for ease of reference, to remind ourselves as to why we're here and what the decision we're required to make today. So are there any questions for Mrs. Rogers on points of fact by anyone appearing? Mr. Ramsey, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Muzaffar Oxus, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
And Miss Ezra Oxus, do you have any questions?
No, I don't know.
And Louise Busfield, do you have any questions at this moment in time?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for a very efficient presentation, Mrs. Rogers. So moving on then, we will ask the applicants to make their application. And Mr. Ramsey, I understand that Mr. Oxus has some difficulty with some of the language, and therefore his daughter will be assisting him in any questions that the members may put. Could I have confirmation of this and how you intend to handle that part of the application? Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, Miss Oxus has asked specifically to speak at the hearing. Mr. Oxus can understand, and he will be able to answer the questions, most of the questions, if any questions are required of him. But Miss Oxus is actually asked to speak to the licensing authority.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you for that clarity. So I will indeed invite Ms. Oxus to address the licensing subcommittee appropriately. But if you'd like to put forward the application, I'll then move on to Ms. Oxus afterwards. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just before I start, I'd like to give my thanks and gratitude to the licensing authority for their willingness to adjourn this case until today to allow me to recover from my recent surgery. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. We last met here in the 21st of July 2020, as was already said by Mrs. Rogers, when the subcommittee felt that due to a lack of time since the last hearing, they felt that the conditions should remain. It's now 13 years since the incident that led to Mr. Oxus losing his personal licence and the addition of the condition on the premises licence. During these years, as has been said at previous hearings, to ensure that he abided by the 4 licensing objectives, Mr. Oxus went to great expense to request me to carry out an inspection and assessment of his operation at More the Merrier. And as a result, recommendations were made by myself to improve the operation. All the additional conditions mentioned by the police at their representation on the October 2019 were offered by Mr. Oxus as a result of my assessment, and no further conditions were felt necessary by the subcommittee at that October 2019 hearing. It's to be noted that during that hearing, Dorset Police stated that if these conditions were adhered to, then they would have no further concerns regarding the running of the premises. During the hearing, Mr. Oxus was asked several questions by the subcommittee in relation to the licensing objectives, and he satisfied the subcommittee with his answers. To my knowledge and that of the premises licence holder and Mr. Oxus, there are no further concerns with the running of this premises in relation to the licensing objectives. Members of the committee, as I have already stated, the offence that led to the revocation of Mr. Ox's personal licence and the condition in question happened 13 years ago in 2008. He was eligible to apply for another personal licence 5 years later, but has not applied until 2019. Although he was under no obligation to do so, Mr. Oxus elected to resit his Level 2 APLH course in order to refresh his knowledge. He passed the course comfortably and has now been granted a personal licence by BCP Council last year. Ironically, Mr Oxus could legally sell or authorise the sale of alcohol in any licensed premises in England and Wales, except the one he owns, the one premises that he and his family rely on for their income, and their house as it's attached to the shop. Mr Oxus lives in regret regarding his actions 13 years ago that have led to this problem, and great expense he, his family and his business have suffered in recent years. Prior to submitting this variation, I contacted Dorset Police to ask their views regarding submitting the application in March. I was assured that there was no recent concerns regarding the premises, but they wished the subcommittee, yourselves, to make the decision at this hearing. The day after the application was submitted, Dorset Police called at the premises and discovered Mr Oxus in the shop not wearing a mask whilst in the shop. When speaking to Mr Oxus, he openly admitted this oversight. He has explained to me that he often goes for half an hour without any customers and removes the mask sometimes during these lulls in business. He does, however, understand that the mask should have been replaced as soon as anyone entered the shop. Although it does not in any way excuse Mr Oxus, I'm sure, like me, you've experienced similar discretions over the past year and a half. It is to be noted that all relevant signs were in place at the shop regards the coronavirus guidance and regulations. The question that has to be asked is, despite everything that Mr Oxus has done in recent years to improve the operation of the business, does this one lapse in the COVID rules in March of this year warrant the subcommittee once again refusing him the opportunity to sell and authorise the sale of alcohol in the premises that he has a vested interest? Earlier this year, in March, the premises licence holder was transferred to Ms Ezra Oxus, who is now also the DPS.
Mr Ramsey, sorry to cut you off in mid-speech. Could I ask everybody please to mute their mics, because it's causing Mr Ramsey some issues. Can everybody mute their mics, please? It's extremely kind of you. Thank you, Mr Ramsey. If you want to go back a little way, perhaps a sentence or two. I'm so sorry to have interrupted you, but it's good to be able to hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure the accent doesn't help either.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, as I said, the question that has to be asked today is, despite everything that Mr Oxus has done in recent years to improve the operation of his business and his own knowledge of the licensing law, does this one lapse in the COVID rules in March of this year warrant the subcommittee once again refusing him the opportunity to sell and authorise the sale of alcohol in the premises that he has a vested interest? Earlier this year in March, the premises licence was transferred to Miss Ezra Oxus, who is now also the DPS. Miss Oxus is university educated and impressed the subcommittee when she spoke eloquently and sensibly at the hearing in October 2019. As a family member, she is extremely aware of the necessity for the premises to be run to a high standard in relation to the licensing objectives. Members of the committee, we would ask you to look favourably on this application and allow Mr Oxus to put these difficult 13 years behind him and allow him again to sell and authorise the sale of alcohol at his own premises by removing this condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Ramsey. I'll move on and ask Miss Ezra Oxus to put forward her presentation, and then we will ask questions. Okay, thank you, Miss Oxus. If you'd like to put forward your submission.
Yep. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'd like to mention that it has been around 2 years since the first hearing. This was when it was decided that he couldn't sell alcohol, and it has been very, very difficult financially for my father. not only because he wasn't able to sell alcohol and he was just paying the worker extra money to obviously work in the shop for longer periods of times, but also the pandemic came at the exact same time. So it has been very, very difficult. But he has done a great job, and for that, I'm very, very proud of him. Within the 2 years, there has been no issues, and I feel like this is enough time to show that he is worthy of getting back his authority to sell alcohol. And the only issue David Ramsey just mentioned was the mask. And in my opinion, the relation to the mask with this case is quite minimal, only because here we are talking about him trying to get his license back to sell alcohol. And the mask, of course, is something that needs to be looked over. Of course it does. But Corona is still quite fairly new, and people are still trying to adapt to the new norm. So it's very normal to see an individual not wearing a mask. There are many, many times where I've gone into corner shops and the owners are either it's hard like over their mouth or over their throats. And I do kind of understand them because, like I said, people are still adapting to the new norm. It's not easy to completely, it's not easy to remember all the time. As well as that, like David Ramsey said, there are times when there's 30 to 45 minutes when there are no customers. And for that, I do understand him why he does take it off. I would do the same thing, and I believe that majority of the people would do also the same thing. So for that, I feel like it was very perfectly normal for him to have it off the time when Louise, but I think it was Louise that walked in. I'm not too sure. But yeah. For that's what I've got to say. As not only his daughter that has seen the struggles that he's gone through, but also as the premises license holder, I believe that the amount of time, so within the 2 years, him not having any issues, is enough time for him to kind of get his license back. I believe that he has showed his loyalty and worth. So as a premises license holder, I do believe that he should get his authority back after all this time. Thank you so much.
I was on mute, Mr. Jones, because you asked me to be, and then I forgot to unmute myself. So I was just saying thank you very much, Ms. Ossis, for your once again eloquent presentation. It's much appreciated. So moving then to questions of Mr. Ossis and also of the applicant, and I'm sure that Ms. Ossis will be able to assist. Any questions then from our members? So I will start with Councillor Brandy. And do you have any questions at this moment in time?
No questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Beeson, do you have any questions?
No questions at this moment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, I do have some questions, and I'm sure that once phrased, members will also be wishing to ask similar questions, but I will pose them. So, Mr. Ossis, this is a question for you. Are you exempt from wearing a COVID-19 face mask? Just to ascertain that, are you exempt? And Ms. Ossis, if you wish to assist your father, that's absolutely fine. We're more than happy with that.
He is not exempt.
Right, okay. So, I'll address my questions to Mr. Ossis, and if you want to assist with any interpretation, that's fine, okay, but you can also answer on his behalf.
Okay.
Okay. Are you aware, Mr. Ossis, that of the strict requirements and high standards expected of a personal license holder?
Baba, farkında mısın premises license holder olarak premises license ve ne kapsıyor, ne demek? Evet de. Sesini aç, mute.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
ascertain that. Thank you very much. And Mr. Ossis, are you further aware of the legal requirement to ensure that your customers and staff members are wearing face coverings, or if exempt, are displaying notification of this? You're aware of the COVID rules, Mr. Ossis, yes?
Ve farkında mısın koronada maske giyilmesi gerek? De ki evet ve zaten signlar var.
Yes, yes, I know, yeah.
Okay, so thank you for confirming that. So having confirmed that, are you aware that you, your staff and customers under the health protection, coronavirus, wearing of face coverings in a relevant place, England Regulations 220 is quoted, are required to wear face coverings? So the question is, why were you not wearing a face covering? And when challenged by the police officer Busfield, why didn't you put on a face covering? In your own words, and I'm happy to take what you say through interpretation through your daughter. Thank you, Mr. Özes.
Diyor ki polis gelince maske giymiyordun, neden giymiyordun? Ama sen açıklaman gerek.
Ben o anda
İngilizce söylemeye çalış.
I speak English.
Should he explain in English or should he explain in Turkish?
Maybe I can't understand the very well. I tell this my daughter, she telling you, or?
If you want to answer in your own words, Mr. Oxis, that's absolutely fine.
İngilizce dene, olsa ben çeviririm.
Yeah, I eating is on the table is the something when ladies come in in the shop. Normally I use my mask, but I keep I leave the next under the table. After she come in, I'm very interesting. Because she comes sometimes she come in my shop. I forget this after I saw her. I heyecanlanmak ne demek? Excited, sorry. When she come in, I excited. I forget is my mask. Normally I always use it. Now I bought the new for the new mask for my boynuma koymak ne demek?
Over your throat.
Yeah, I bought a different one. It's over the throat. Now always I use it now. So sorry. Yeah.
I can translate if you need any translation.
No, I think we got the gist of that. Okay. So my further question is that Mr. Oxis, you say that it was an error, it was an oversight. I think the members will be having some difficulty understanding if it was an oversight, and we'll take you at your word. We have a report from the officer, and it says that you weren't wearing a mask, you were challenged, and you said that you sometimes do, and you sometimes do wear a mask. You then proceeded to rummage around the floor, and you held up a clear plastic visor, but you didn't put it on. And then, Mr. Özes, you went to speak to a customer in the shop, and you still weren't wearing your mask. So although there may have been that initial oversight, why, once you were challenged and reminded of the need to wear a mask, did you not then wear a mask and indeed interact with a customer without a mask on? I think that's a difficulty the members of this subcommittee will be having in understanding. If you could explain that to us, quite happy to take translation through your daughter. Thank you.
Diyor ki polis sana söyledikten sonra sen maskeyi tuttun, ondan sonra bir tane bir customer geldi ama sen yine maskeni koymadın yüzüne, yani sen customer'la maskesiz konuştun. Neden? Diyeyim mi ki böyle heyecandan yine?
Ben hatırlamıyorum öyle bir şey. Hem heyecan, ben bir de bir şey yiyordum da ben o gelen müşteriyi hatırlamıyorum. Ben o Mrs. Lewis'la konuşurken heyecanlandım çünkü önceleri bu kaç senedir hep problem yaşadığım için onu görünce birdenbire unuttum yani. Öyle bir heyecanlıktan unuttum. Onunla konuştuğum için o hiç aklıma şey gelmedi ama o anda bir şey yediğim için ben onu takmadım. O da gelince heyecanlandım, öyle unuttum diye. Yoksa sayınlar, mayınlar her şeyimiz var ya, ama her şeyi de yapıyorum yani.
So at the time when Louise Busfield came in, it's been quite a long time since my dad saw her, and when she came in, he kind of got like kind of shocked and excited and like nervous, so he completely forgot, and that's not an excuse or anything, but this is just the truth. He got kind of like he completely forgot about it because of how nervous he was. That's the reason why. But other than that, he does wear a mask. There are signs everywhere. He's constantly usually got a mask when he's speaking to customers.
Yani normalinde zaten ben onu tanıdığım için takmam gerekiyor ama o anda heyecanlandığımda takamadım.
He knows that of course he's expected to wear a mask, especially in front of a police officer. So if he wasn't wearing a mask at that time, it shows that he was
Not for her, yani everybody. Yani herkes için takıyorum yani.
Kind of shook back from it, you know, and completely forgot at that time because of his emotions at the time.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to clarify, it was causational, that the shock of seeing the officer caused him not to put the mask on, even though he was reminded to do so. Okay, thank you for that. And just two more little questions. Mr. Uxis, are you aware of the huge risk and dangers attributed to the transference of COVID by individuals who do not wear masks?
Farkında mısın böyle kötü şeyler ne olabilir korona maske giymezsen?
Mutlaka tabii ki farkındayım.
Evet de.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, do you feel it's important to wear a mask, comply with the law and to protect your customers, your staff and of course yourself?
Sence önemli mi maske giymek?
Hastalık için tabii ki.
For health reasons, of course.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry there were so many questions, but we are trying to understand better from you as to the situation. Thank you so much. So I'll just pop back to members now. I've probably covered everything, members, but is there anything else that you'd like to ask at this time? Oh, Councillor Decent, yes, of course, please. Put your mic on, Councillor Decent.
It's on.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Your question. Thank you, Councillor Decent.
Interested from what you just said, if a customer comes into the shop and they're not wearing a mask, would you change them?
Bir tane bir customer girse shop'a ve maske giymiyorsa onlar söyler misin maske giy diye?
Mutlaka hepsine söylemişimdir ama bazıları yani elinle kapatıyor olmadıkları için ben bir şey yapamadım. Yani her zaman hepsine söylemişimdir.
He always says it to every customer, but there are times when there's a customer that isn't wearing it, so they use a hand or something. But in that case, he doesn't really know what he can do.
Shop'un her yerinde de sayınlar.
He would always challenge them, and there's always signs. It's very clear that you need to wear a mask within the shop.
And outside as well in the shop. Outside.
And outside, the signs, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you content, Councillor Decent?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Dion, I don't know if you have any further questions.
No further questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So now other parties with regard to any questions they may have for the applicant. Louise Busfield, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Sarah Rogers, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, thank you.
Very much. So we move now to our responsible authorities with regard to their application, their information. We don't have any other persons, any objectors here this morning. So I will ask if Louise Busfield would like to put forward her presentation. Thank you, Ms. Busfield.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will keep it brief because you'll all have sight of the application. And it's also been introduced very succinctly by Sarah Rogers and David Ramsey. So just to really briefly recap that this is a condition that was imposed, as has been mentioned, by the Magistrates' Court, and the variation was then since refused by the subcommittee in July 2020. My visit in March of this year as a courtesy visit really for anyone who's seeking a variation or a new application, we do endeavour to visit all applicants and speak to them. The subsequent visit, as discussed, did reinforce in me a lack of confidence in Mr. Oxus' ability and commitment to uphold the licensing objectives, as he appeared to me to be dismissive of the health protection, coronavirus, wearing of face coverings regulations. And that just implied a rather disregard to the law. Therefore, it's the considered opinion of myself and my senior officers that this variation should once again be put before the subcommittee for their comments and decision.
Okay, thank you very much. Is it Miss Busfield or Mrs. Busfield?
Well, I tend to go by MS, so I don't know how you choose to pronounce that.
Right. Well, I think I'll just use your first name. I think that's probably easier, Louise.
If you would, thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course. Okay. So now questions of Louise Busfield by members. Councillor Dion, do you have any questions?
Yeah, when you went on your cursory visit, there was no reason for alcohol licensing abuse in your inspection. They were following all the rules and regulation as set down.
Yes, as far as I'm aware, it was purely a courtesy visit to discuss the variation.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
no further
you.
questions.
Thank you, Councillor Dion. And Councillor Decent?
No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Louise Busfield, I do have some questions, and I think we need some confirmation, some clarification on your statement. You clearly stated here that Mr. Osgood was seated behind the counter, not wearing a mask, and when challenged, he stated, "I sometimes do," and proceeded to rummage around the floor, whereby he held up a clear plastic visor, which he did not put on. Mr. Ozis then left his seat to speak to a customer in the shop, still failing to wear a mask. So at no stage did Mr. Oxis put a mask on whilst you were there?
No, he didn't.
He didn't. And that was the extent of your challenge. You didn't then further remind him. The extent of the challenge was as your statement states.
I reminded him that it was necessary under the coronavirus regulations to wear a mask and to ensure that his customers were wearing a mask.
Did you remind him more than once, or was it just the once as in the statement?
I spoke to him when I first entered and he wasn't wearing a mask, which is when he proceeded to find one on the floor. And as he again got up and spoke to a customer who incidentally was wearing a mask, I reminded Mr. Oxus again, as it was concerning that he'd left his position behind the counter and was now wandering on the shop floor.
So there are in fact two reminders.
There would have been two reminders, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's useful. Okay, I don't have any further questions for you, Louise Busfield, but I will now ask Mr. Ramsey if there are any questions for Louise Busfield. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, just one question for Louise. Just to confirm that prior to your visit that's just been mentioned, can you just confirm that prior to that, the police stated and had no concerns at all regarding the operation in relation to the licensing objectives?
Yes, until that stage, we had no concerns, hence my courtesy visit just to discuss this variation. If we had had concerns, obviously we would have engaged with Mr. Oxus and his daughter and discussed any concerns that we did have.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Are there any questions for Louise Busfield from Ezra Oxus?
No, thank you.
Okay. Could I just come in with just one more final question, please, Louise Busfield? You went to the premises, it says in your statement, "I conducted a visit to the premises. The Dorset Police had received reports that there was a lack of enforcement on the premises of wearing masks as required under the health protection regulations." But you said that you were going to a courtesy visit. So how does that relate?
It was a courtesy visit. As I say, we do endeavour to visit all premises where we receive applications for variations and new applications. During the height of the pandemic, Dorset Police received multiple intelligence reports, some of which were accurate, some of which weren't accurate, in relation to numerous premises. Now, More the Merrier had featured, we did have a couple of intelligence reports in relation to non-wearing of face masks at More the Merrier, but as a matter of course, it wouldn't have been my responsibility to follow up on this because we had a dedicated team of officers to make such follow-ups. So my interest was in respect of the variation that had been submitted. And with this intelligence, the community intelligence, I went there as a matter of course as a follow-up because it wasn't corroborated and it probably wouldn't have reached the level for one of our dedicated teams to actually attend the premises to verify for themselves.
I see. So it was a courtesy visit with other information you took along with you, and that was to confirm that that information was proven or otherwise. And you say there were 2 reports. Do you know exactly how many reports there were with regard to not wearing face masks or the alleged not wearing face masks?
No, as I say, during that period, at the height of the pandemic, we received multiple tens, hundreds possibly of intelligence reports on a weekly basis.
Yeah, okay. Louise Busfield, please, just 1 minute. I'm sorry, just put my question in because I don't think you want to do my question. My question is, with regard to this specific premise, you say there were a couple of reports. Do you know exactly the number, or are you just saying a couple because you're not sure of the number? Is it 1, 2?
There were at least, the premises was mentioned on at least 2 occasions.
Fine.
I can't say exactly how many occasions it was, but I have to also stress that this intelligence was not necessarily corroborated.
Exactly.
It was intelligence only.
I totally understand. Thank you very much, Louise Busfield. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, so that said, Sarah Rogers, do you have any questions for Louise Busfield?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
So now all parties are to be given the opportunity to sum up, and we will start with the party who spoke last, who will go first. So I will ask, looking at the running order, I will ask the responsible authority, that's you, Louise Busfield, if you'd like to sum up. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I've got nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ramsey, your opportunity to sum up.
Yes, thank you. My client and the owner, Mr. Ogses, have worked tirelessly to ensure that More the Merrier operates to a high standard in relation to the 4 licensing objectives. And you've already heard from Ms. Busfield that there has been no concerns until her visit regarding the mask. You've heard representation from the police regarding this, and Mr. Ogses openly admits that there was a failing during that visit. It is rather concerning to hear regarding further intelligence, when this has never been mentioned prior to this committee meeting, because this was never put to myself or Mr. Ogses. He has been the subject of this condition now for 13 years, and he can obviously go and work in other premises where this is the premises where he has the vested interest. He's voluntarily repeated his APLH exam and has now once again obtained his personal licence. Ms. Ezra has taken over the licence and the DPS, and will work diligently to ensure that there's no breaches of COVID regulations or the licensing objectives. And we would ask that you look favourably on this. He's 13 years. He's now been improving his operation. This one lapse in the COVID will leave to yourselves to decide whether you feel that warrants this condition staying on the licence. But we would ask you to look on it favourably. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Ms. Oxis, if you'd like to summarise.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Did you say Mr. Oxis or Miss?
Sorry, Ezra Oxis, if you'd like to summarise. Sorry, Ezra.
No worries. I'd like to say we've been trying our best, our absolute best, in order to get his authority back. I can see it from my dad's actions. He's been trying his best. I really, really do hope and understand, an understanding, like you guys understand where we're coming from. It has really, really affected us financially, as though it's in fact affected us like family-wise. So yeah, I really do hope you show some understanding with this. Additionally, I would like to quickly just say something really quick. Louise Busfield did say that there was loads and loads of reports, hundreds, thousands, you said, if I'm not wrong. And if that's the case, shouldn't all owners be taken back and not be allowed to sell alcohol? Of course, this is something that is very crucial. The regulations, corona regulations, is very, very crucial. However, when we're looking into the aspect of him being able to sell alcohol, he has never shown anything that goes against him being able to sell alcohol. So I feel like that shouldn't be something that is used against him in this case. But yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Osgood. And Mr. Mr. Oxis, not Osgood. Mr. Oxis, if you'd like to, is there anything you would like to say?
Bir şey demek ister misin?
Şunu demek istiyorum. Bu report yapanlar konusunda yani shop işini bilenler bilir. Yani seni sevmeyenler de senin aleyhine şey yapabilirler, report yapabilirler bunları. Her zaman yani karşılaşıyoruz.
Onu deme, onu deme.
O yüzden tamam bir şey demiyorum de teşekkür ediyorum hepinize.
He's just saying thank you. He wanted to say something, but he changed his mind. He says thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just two points for you, for Mr. and Miss Oxis. The reason you raised the point about in your summary about applying to all owners. The reason why there was the visit was because of the past history of your father. And of course, past history of other owners in similar circumstances might not have been the same. So that was the reason why that happened in this instance. And also I need to tell you that finance, profit or loss has no remit under the 4 licensing objectives. So we can't take that in consideration. Just to let you know that, those points. Okay, thank you very much for that. So Sarah Rogers, did you have any, would you like to summarise? Are you content?
I'm content, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers. So thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions and your openness in answering all the questions of the members and the information provided. So I'll now conclude the hearing. So at the end of this full meeting this morning, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and the clerk to deliberate. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which is today. And the notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. And I'll ask our legal advisor, Mrs. Cole, if she'd kindly explain the right of appeal. Thank you, Mrs. Cole. Are you with us, Mrs. Cole? Looks as if we might have lost our legal advisor.
So I believe she may have accidentally logged out there by the looks of it. Shall we just give
Okay,
her a couple of minutes to just rejoin?
Bless her, we can wait, not a problem. I need to wait because we need to formally advise applicants of the right of appeal. It needs to come from our legal advisor. I can see, Linda, are you with us now?
Yes. Yep.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry about that. You obviously lost contact there for a minute.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem. Would you kindly explain the right of appeal, please?
Of course. There will be a right of appeal to any decision that's been made later this morning. That appeal should be made to Dorset Magistrates Court within 21 days of formal notification of that decision.
Thank you very much indeed. So that concludes our hearing. Thank you very much for your attendance. So I'd just like to ask, please, if Louise Busfield and Miss Oxis and Mr. Oxis and Sarah Rogers leave the virtual meeting room. You're welcome to tune into YouTube if you wish to observe the following hearing. Thank you. I'll just give you a moment to leave. And thank you very much for your attendance today. Mr. Ramsey, you'll be staying with us, I understand, for the following agenda item. Thank you. I'll just give a little moment for people to leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cutler, could you advise me, please, when we're all ready and everybody's in position? And we need to invite our applicants and new attendees in for our next item.
What I'll do is I'll just put my camera and myself on mute once everyone's left, and I will give the applicants a call because we finished a little bit ahead of time on that one. So I will chase them up and get them to join now. Okay.
Mr. Jones, I don't know if you think it's relevant. Should we stop live stream while we have a short stay whilst we go into the next item, or are you content to continue? That's absolutely fine. So we will rejoin at 5 to 11. So that's 10:55, 5 minutes short adjournment. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee, Wednesday, June 29th, 2020, to hear the business as stated on gender before us. And we are at item 6, which is chunks, fried chicken and pizza. And an application has been received for a new premises licence for the premises known as Chunks Fried Pizza, 683 Christchurch Road, Bournemouth, BH7 6AA. The matter is brought before the Licence Subcommittee for determination today. So I'll ask the participants to please introduce themselves and state their role, and if members of the subcommittee would advise us of their ward. So Councillor Norman Decent. You're on mute, Councillor Decent, unfortunately.
Terrible habit, my sincere apologies.
No problems.
Yes, Councillor Norman Decent. I'm councillor for the Kinston ward and member of the licensing board.
Thank you very much, Councillor Decent. And Councillor Dion?
Councillor Brian Dion, Penhill.
Thank you. My name is Councillor Jude Butt. I'm chairman of the licensing board and chairman of the subcommittee for today's purposes, and I'm the ward councillor for Crickmore, Kilbourne and Waterloo. Thank you very much. Our reserve members, if they are still waiting, they are now excused and may go about their business as they won't be required. Thank you very much for your assistance today. So we move on now to our applicants. Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, David Ramsey, licensing consultant representing Chicken Club Limited, the applicant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. And Mr. McGladza.
Yeah, George McGladza, director and manager of Chicken Club Limited, also trading as Chunks Fried Chicken and Pizza.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGladza. We don't have any responsible authorities. Unfortunately, I don't think other persons vis-a-vis are. Oh, we've just got hold of the objector and he's trying to join us now, so we'll just wait one moment. What marvellous timing. We'll just give it a moment. I unfortunately got the wrong date. Bless him, so he's hopefully coming in now. We'll just give him a moment so he can introduce himself, if everybody's content. I'm just, I have a chair's chat, which gives me information about process. Unfortunately, all meals have been going to his junk box. He's found them and he's trying to join us now. So we'll just wait one moment. These things happen with technology, don't they, unfortunately? If we had a face-to-face, hopefully we'd all be in the meeting room at the same time and we wouldn't have these issues. Okay, what I'll do is I'll ask our council officers to introduce themselves, and then when Mr. Ralphie joins us, I'll ask him to introduce himself. So moving to our council officers, thank you. Tanya Jardim. I think you're on mute, Ms. Jardim.
Sorry, apologies. I forgot what you said, Chair, because I was in the meeting to the conversation with Mr. Alfie. So just introduce myself. I think that's what you've requested. It's Tanya Jardine, licensing officer, dealing with this application.
We asked the impossible of you to do two things at one time. Thank you very much, Mr. Jardine. Linda Cole.
Morning. Good morning, it's Linda Cole. I'll be advising the subcommittee this morning.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cole. And you've already heard from our clerk, Michelle Cutler.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Cutler and I'm your clerk for today. Thank you.
And in addition, we have Democratic Services officers in the background who are beavering away to provide technical support, and they've been busy today to the meeting, but don't take any part in the hearing to support us. Is Ralphie with us yet, Mrs. Jardine? You're on mute.
Sorry, apologies. Yes. He put the phone down so he can try and connect to the meeting. So I'm hoping Michelle did send it to him again. So I'm hoping he can get through now, because when I told him about the meeting, he looked on his junk mail and it was in there. So I think he's trying to do that now, hopefully.
I'm going to move on because obviously I want him to be part of the deliberations and the questioning and the submissions. So we will give him a moment. If members are content with that. Councillor Decent, Councillor Brian, Diane, are you content with that?
No problem at all.
Thank you very much.
I am, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll give him a moment, and then I will ask the licensing officer to put forward her presentation. I think as Mr. Ralphie has admitted he had the wrong date, it would be appropriate for us to go forward. Okay, we have no connection yet. Mrs. Jardine?
No.
Okay, well, I'm going to start the meeting.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair, he is just waiting in the lobby now. Come in.
Okay, so if we'd like to invite him in then, thank you.
I'm just admitting him now, Chair. We should see him any second now.
Thank you,
And
Mrs.
he should be in the room.
Okay, Mr. Ralphie, are you with us? It's your chair, Councillor Jude Spatt speaking. You're very welcome. If you'd like to answer, that you can hear us and you're in the room.
He's on mute.
Right, if you'd like to unmute yourself, Ralphie. Mr. Ralphie, can you hear me? My name is Councillor Jude Spatt and I'm the chairman of this subcommittee. If you'd just like to confirm.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I can hear you.
That's lovely, Mr. Ralphie. If you just stay with us and listen to the process and procedure with regard to the meeting, and you'll be invited to speak at the appropriate time. Thank you for joining us. So moving on then, you're welcome. Moving on then, before I run through the procedure, I'll just check that all persons who've given notice of their intention to speak have been identified, which they have, and anyone who wishes to withdraw representation or wishes not to speak, do so now, please. I see no indication, so I'll take this to correct. So I'll go through the procedure with regard to order of speaking. The licensing officer presenting the report will speak first, and there'll be questions of the officer and points of fact by all parties. Members of the subcommittee will go first. We then move on to the applicant who will make their application, and there'll be questions of the applicant by all parties. Again, members of the subcommittee will go first. We have no responsible authorities, but we do have a phrase as other persons will make their representations, and that will be our objector. And questions of other persons will then follow, with members of the subcommittee going first. At the end of that period, all parties will be given the opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke first to go last. Spoke first to go last. Sorry, spoke first. Last to go first. I'll get it right in a minute. Party who spoke last will go first. Okay, so the hearing will then conclude, and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and clerk. And notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day on the last day in which the hearing was held, in accordance with the regulations due to COVID, and that is today. And the notification of decision will be including informal information about the right of appeal as appropriate, and I'll be asking our legal advisor, Mrs. Cole, to give that at the appropriate time. So I now have all parties to confirm agreement of the proposed procedure or to make representation. So, Mr. Ramsey, are you content with the process?
Yes, I'm content, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. McAdser, are you content?
Well, I'm content.
Thank you. And Mr. Ralphie, are you content?
Yes.
And thank you. And Mrs. Jardim, are you content?
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. So finally, may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations. And all questions are to be asked through the chairman, and there's to be no cross-examination of parties. So we will commence, and I will ask our licensing officer, Mrs. Tanya Jardim, to put forward her report. Thank you, Mrs. Jardim.
Thank you very much. So before I give an introduction to this matter, I must bring to your attention an error in my report. I refer you to paragraph 5, line 5, where it states only home deliveries will take place between 0100 and 0400 on Saturday to Thursday and 0200 to 0400 on Friday and Saturday. This should have been deleted when the report was finalised, and please accept my apologies for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Jardim. That's page 32, members, for clarity. It's page 32 of the report, which you can easily addend to. and it's deleting the words only home deliveries will take place between 0-100 hours and 400 hours on Sunday to Thursday and 200 hours to 400 hours on Friday and Saturday. So we need to set that aside. It's not relevant because it conflicts with the other conditions. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardine. And the other point which I'd also like you to cover, which I should have raised before I asked you to speak, was page 43 and 45. Can we have some clarity, please, on the wording with regard to the end of permitted hours on January the 2nd? There's some confusion there as to exactly what that pertains to. I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I might discuss that with Mr. Ramsey after I've done my introduction, and perhaps he can clarify. I have a suggestion, but we can discuss that in more detail.
Thank you very much. I'll refer that to Mr. Ramsey and we can sort that text out between us. Thank you very much indeed. So if you'd like to now continue with your presentation. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardine.
I will do. Thank you very much. So the application before you today is to consider whether to grant a premises licence at Chuck's Fried Chicken and Pizza, situated at 683 Christchurch Road, Boscombe. Application was submitted by Mr. David Ramsey on behalf of Chicken Club Limited on the 24th of March 2020. The application made is for late night refreshments, indoors and outdoors, Monday to Sunday, 2300 to 0400 hours, and the supply of alcohol on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 1200 to 0400 hours. Although the terminal hour applied for is 0400 hours, the applicant has explained that those hours are for home deliveries only, and the premises will close to the public at 0100 hours on Sunday to Thursday and 0200 hours on Friday and Saturday. The licensing office received one representation against the application from one other person on the grounds that the application would undermine the prevention of public nuisance licensing objective. Environmental Health Pollution Control initially objected to the application on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance. However, the applicant agreed conditions with the Environmental Health Officer by way of mediation, and the objections were subsequently withdrawn. It was agreed that to bring the hours in line with those of other similar premises in the vicinity, the hours for delivery be reduced to 0100 hours Sunday to Thursday and 0200 hours Friday and Saturday. In addition, they agreed to add two conditions. One is that staff will encourage customers and delivery drivers to leave quietly, not loiter outside or in the vicinity of the premises, and always have regard for residents. And two, that all staff, including delivery drivers, will be trained, and the training signed by employees, making them aware that they must be considerate of neighbouring premises, and a sign requiring this will also be placed on the back door at all times. And I understand the back door is that used by delivery drivers. We received no further representations from any of the responsible authorities, and now members are asked to consider whether to grant this application, and should the licence be granted and the applicants fail to operate in accordance with their licence and any conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any responsible authorities or interested parties may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardine. I'd just like, if you could, we'll go to members for the questions as a point of clarification for me, but we have now questions on points of fact from all parties, and members to take first stop. So, Councillor Decent, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Jardine?
Yes, I do have one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Decent.
Yeah, you mentioned about there's a back door to the premises where delivery bikes actually used to then take to customers. From my memory, Christchurch Road has residential properties above and also the side of it. How do the actual applicant would monitor the noise factor if they are using bikes? Bikes are very noisy. And I'm just wondering how we can actually sort of enforce this.
Okay, what we'll do there, Councillor Decent, is we'll ask the applicant to answer that one. I'm sure that Mrs. Jardine would have some ideas from her vast experience as to how that happens, but specifically we'll ask the applicant so they'll advise us on this occasion. Thank you for your I'll ensure that that question is put. In fact, you might note it and put that one yourself, Councillor Deason. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dion, are there any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Jardine?
Yes, Chair, I have one question.
Thank you,
Ms. Jardine.
Councillor Dion. Carry on.
You mentioned that the hours were brought in line with other establishments in the area. Could you give me just a rough number of, you know, is it in the area they're like 10, less than 5?
So when I this was the information provided by Environmental Health, and when I've done my own research, there are 6 premises in the area that provide license. So licensed premises, there are 6. However, they all vary in times and the type of the activities they allow, and also the whether it's on or off. Majority it depends on what they are. Takeaway wise, there is really only just one, and they've only just applied for their license, and they've applied up to between 11 o'clock up until 3, but that's on application at the moment, so we don't have a final time for that one. All the others are restaurants and cafes.
Currently, there's no one else conducting delivery alcohol at this time.
No, that's correct.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Excellent question, Councillor Dion. The only takeaway that I could find was Mellow Bar, which was a dine-in and takeaway, and in fact their hours were 2 a.m. in the morning, Councillor Dion. So it gives a litmus test there. Thank you for that question. My question, please, Mrs. Jardine, is reducing the terminal hour for delivery. This first condition, which Environmental Health have placed. To reduce the terminal hour for delivery to 1 a.m. Sunday to Thursday and 2 a.m. Friday to Saturday, in line with other similar premises in the locality. So does that mean that the 4 a.m. Terminal hour fails? So it moves from 4 to 1 and 4 to 2. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Thank you very much. That's extremely helpful for clarity. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardine, for answering those questions. So now I'll ask our other attendees if they have any questions for Mrs. Jardine. And Mr. Ramsey, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McGladster, do you have any questions for our licensing officer and points of fact with regard to her report? Mr. Gladster, are you with us? Oh dear, I think we've lost him for a bit. Michelle, I'm not seeing Mr. Gladster.
Hello?
Oh, you're there, Mr. Gladster. I hope you're able to hear proceedings. I'm asking if you have any questions for Mrs. Jardine, who is our licensing officer, on points of fact with regard to her report.
Actually, you know, you said you guys there's only one. Can
you speak up, Mr. Gladster? We're having difficulty hearing you. Can you speak up, please?
Hello, can you hear me better now?
That's better, thank you. Yes. Any questions for Mrs. Jardine? Yes, we can hear.
One of the people said that there's only Mellow Bar operating late. Well, they were operating eating and takeaway, right? In the area. What's your
question for Mrs. Jardine, please, Mr. McGladster?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say something, that's all.
Okay, well, this is the time for questions. You'll be able to make a statement at a later stage. Thank you very much.
Okay.
No questions. Thank you. So, Mr. Roudby, do you have any questions for Mrs. Jardine on points of fact with regard to her presentation, please?
Just one question, please, that the Mellow Bar is actually closes at 11 and they serve alcohol, so they are classed as a pub, not as a takeaway business.
That's not my understanding, but thank you for that. And that's not a question, but if you don't have any questions, we'll move on. Thank you very much. So we move on then to the applicant. Your opportunity now to put forward your presentation. So Mr. Ramsey, on behalf of the applicant, if you're ready, thank you.
Yes, good morning. The premises proposed, as you've heard, is a chicken and pizza restaurant with limited covers, providing hot food and drink primarily for takeaway and home delivery service. Present today is the director of Chicken Club Limited, the company making the application. That's Mr. George McGladsey. He has been in the industry since he was 17 and built his way up to from being a delivery driver to the director of his own company. He has recently sold a similar fast food premises in Ferndown in order to concentrate on this new venture. Initially, as you've heard, the application was for a terminal time of 0400 hours. This was limited to home deliveries, the premises closing to the public at midnight. Sunday and Thursday, midnight on Sunday and Thursday to Thursday, and 0200 hours on Friday and Saturday. However, after mediation with Mr. Andrew Hill of the Environmental Health, it was agreed by my client that the hours for home deliveries would be reduced to a terminal hour of 0100 hours on Sunday to Thursday and 0200 hours on Friday and Saturday. These hours are similar to other nearby fast food outlets in the close vicinity of the premises. Being aware of the problems that can be experienced in the Boscombe area, I ensured that the list of offered conditions attached to the operating schedule were robust enough to ensure that the management could more than meet the 4 licensing objectives. It is pleasing that when advising the licensing authority that they had no objections, Dorset Police referred to these offered conditions as comprehensive and thanked the applicant for including them in the application. When being made aware of the representation from a nearby resident, it was disappointing that he or she made it clear that they did not wish to be contacted by myself or my client, instead insisting that the matter be heard by yourselves. This deprived me of the opportunity to meet and discuss their concerns and possibly put in place actions that would allay their fears. In the representation, they compare the applicant's operation to 2 public houses nearby, a totally different operation to the one my client is wishing to operate. The premises is in fact similar to an operation that is approximately 50 metres further up Christchurch Road at number 705, known as Pizza Go-Go. There is no mention in the representation of the objector of problems whatsoever from Pizza. It is to be noted that both Dorset Police and Environmental Health are satisfied that the conditions offered, if adhered to, will ensure that this premises will in no way add to the existing antisocial problems in this area of Boscombe. And we would respectfully request that you look favourably on this application. Thank you. You're on mute, Chair.
Chairman, you're on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm doing that because Mr. Jones keeps telling me it's giving better clarity for text, so forgive me. Thank you very much for that presentation, Mr. Ramsey. Just to advise you that although mediation is always positive, Mr. Ramsey has a right to ask for the item to come to the licensing committee because of his objection. So I wanted to state that it isn't a requirement for him to mediate with you. So now asking Mr. McGladsey, as the second individual wishes to speak on this item as the applicant. Mr. McGladsey, your time to put your submission forward.
Yes, as I was saying earlier, like Mr. Ramsey explained, there is another takeaway a couple of doors down for me, and they're serving till 2 in the morning. And the main reason I actually applied for the late license is because of COVID, everyone nowadays is doing deliveries and takeaways, correct? Because obviously they're a bit worried to go to a restaurant to eat in. Obviously, with the COVID still existing and everybody's wearing masks and a little bit more hazardous, so they stay at home. But the only problem is my takeaway in Ferndown, there's only 20 takeaways in the whole of the bit I am in that delivers. But when I moved to Boscombe, when I checked how many people delivering online, over 200, 300 takeaways restaurants delivering in the heart of Boscombe and Bournemouth. And obviously that brings a strain on me and my staff. We're thinking how we're going to survive, especially not many people want to walk in right now as well. So this is why I actually applied for this license. And in perfect honesty, all my alcohol was planning to go through delivery. I wasn't planning, because I'm applying for it, I might as well have it, but I wasn't really looking for, I didn't really want to deal with drunk people myself. You know what I mean? I didn't want any trouble or anything like this. I just wanted to just do deliveries, really. And yeah, that's all I can really say, if I'm honest.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gloucester, for your honesty. Thank you very much indeed. That's extremely helpful. We will now move on to questions of the applicant. So that's Mr. McBadser and Mr. Ramsey as Mr. McBadser's agent. So I'll ask, are there any questions, member, for either party? Councillor Dion?
No questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Deason?
No questions at this stage, thank you.
Okay, I have some questions on some textual format, please, Mr. Ramsey. Firstly, if we go back to the point I raised with Mrs. Jardine, is the item at page 43 and 45 with regard to the opening hours. How should this read? And can you please tell us what your intent is for the opening hours for the new year? Thank you.
Yes, that's an error on my point. I believe that it should be terminal hours on the 1st of January.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And that's for page 43 and page 45.
That's correct.
Lovely. We'll amend that accordingly. Thank you very much, subject to any other conditions. So that's useful. My other questions sit around the registration of the particular company. It was registered, it was formed on the 15th of January this year, and the DPS is Abdullah Ibrahim, and the company director we've heard from Mr. McGladster is going to, between the two of them, they're going to be running this new premise. Now, we've heard from you that Mr. McGladster has been working, beavering away since he was 17, and he's still a very young man, lucky man at 23. So he's had 6 years experience. So I'd like to hear, please, from you, Mr. McGladster, as to what experience you've gleaned or learned over that 6 years with regards to the position which you hold and running this company, this new venture. Thank you, Mr. McGladster.
Well, I was 16, I was an estate agent, and I didn't really make a lot of money, so I became a delivery driver. And when I was a delivery driver, I kind of started enjoying, I was actually working in Pizza Hut in Boscombe, funny enough. I was learning how the trade works, you know, how we're making the pizzas, how we deal with customers. And from there, I just grew more into the business. And then I remember I then left Pizza Hut, and then I actually started working late night in another pizza shop in Old Christchurch Road. And I remember how fun, enjoyable it was. And obviously, it's not going to be like perfect, you know, every single day. It's not going to be amazing every night. But at the same time, when I was working at Old Christchurch Road, there's about 10, 15 takeaways open late at night. There's over hundreds, or maybe even thousands of people walking in drunk after late night. Where I planning to open my shop, my business in Christchurch Road, there's only 2 little bars. It doesn't seem like it's going to be too much hassle dealing with the customers. Especially, I've actually met some of the owners of the bars and I actually get along with them, and they seem quite nice. But with my experience, I've learned how to deal with drunk customers. I learned how to manage a business and making sure, well, health and safety, of course, and, you know, running the business as, you know, no interference from police or anything bad would happen. And as well, security-wise, I've got my CCTV, making sure everything's fine. But with my experience, I've been a head chef, I've been a manager, I've been a delivery driver, I've been a receptionist, even making boxes. And I saved up and I did what I wanted to do, like as in I chased what I wanted to do, and this is what I'm doing. And I'm happy with it as well.
Okay, Mr.
And I wouldn't change my career.
Thank you very much for that. And one small point, I think it'd be useful for the members to understand the experience of yourself as the applicant and the DPS of sales of alcohol, particularly as takeaway will be likely to be very late at night when customers may already be under the influence. So you touched on that with regard to the amount of alcohol that people may have been drinking before they come to you. So how will you use your experience and also the experience of Mr. Ibrahim in dealing with those types of customers and ensuring that ensuring the licensing objectives are upheld? Thank you, Mr. McGladster.
First things first, I wouldn't serve alcohol to drunk customers or even tipsy customers. Okay. Like I said earlier, I don't really like dealing with them, so I would politely ask them to leave the premises. If they want to just come in and enjoy the food, I'm happy to serve the food. I'm happy to do that. But when it comes to noisy, drunk customers, I don't want to deal with them. I'll happily call the police, get them removed. Before that, I'll politely ask them to leave, so there wouldn't be any. Obviously, me calling the police, sirens come on and everything comes on, and removing it while people are asleep is not going to be nice. So I'm going to politely ask them to leave. I'll even call a taxi for them if they like.
Okay, I think you answered that very well. Thank you very much indeed. I'll just go back to our members just to see if they have any further questions out of that. Councillor Dion, do you have anything further to ask?
I was curious. So this is for a premises license. Who's the actual license holder then?
DPS is Mr. Ibrahim, and the director of the company is Mr. McGladster.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So no further questions from the members then. So we now move on to other parties to ask questions, and this is your opportunity, Mr. Ralphie, to ask questions of the applicant. Mr. Ralphie.
I don't have any question at this stage.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mrs. Jardim, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we move on now to responsible authorities and other persons. We don't have any responsible authorities, but we do have one objector as other person, who is Mr. Ralphie. So, Mr. Ralphie, if you'd like to put forward your submission, please, with regard to this application. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. The director of the company spoke about his experience. I'd like to speak about my experience dealing with drunk customers. I've run takeaways in Charminster. I've managed takeaways on Old Christchurch Road, and I've managed an Indian restaurant. So I have also worked with Pizza Hut. I have experience with late night food serving. But the problem here is not just serving food. The problem here is serving alcohol. And this particular area, we cannot compare this part of Boscombe with Old Christchurch Road, which is the heart of town. My bedroom is directly above the restaurant. The entrance to my property is right next door to the restaurant. So when they have drunk customers coming from Mellow Bar and also from Marroy's Bar, which is right opposite the premises that has applied, they close at 11. Drunk customers who have been drinking alcohol since 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, and they have carried on drinking pints after pints up until 11 o'clock. When they are kicked out of Mellow Bar and also Marroy's Bar, they are hungry, they need food. Where they would come? They would come to this premises. So this creates a triangle of chaos. I'm surprised that so far nobody has touched on a report from Melo Melo Bar and also Marroy's Bar. I think we should have had a report from the police that only in the last 2 months, only since the pubs opened, how many times the police have actually attended that premises because of complaints, because of fights, and how many times the residents have actually witnessed fights erupting on the road. It was only a couple of weeks ago when I actually was watching from my window that there were 3 male and I think about 3 female. They had fights, and one of the male was actually dragging the other male on the road where cars are passing.
Mr. Ralphie,
his shirt came off.
Ralphie, could I stop you there, please? These incidents are not with regard to the premises that's making the application. These incidents are with regard to Morays and Melo Melo, so they have no significance, I'm afraid. If you could keep your submission with regard to the application that you have in front of you and the 4 licensing objectives, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Okay, but this is what is going to happen. From my personal experience in the last 20 years that I have been in hospitality industry and catering, this is what's going to happen. When those bars close, those people will come to this premises, and then there would be incident after incident, incident after incident, incident after incident. And I cannot, you know, serve or allow a chunk of my life to be then dealing with making complaints, dealing with sending emails, sending letters, and complaining from noise, calling the police and calling the environmental agency. So I'm trying to give you a picture that this is what is going to happen, and I don't want to be continuously involved with this, and we should avoid this.
Okay, Mr.
By not allowing the timings and the serve of alcohol beyond 11 o'clock. Up until 11 o'clock, I have no objection. I wish the director and the owner of businesses and all businesses to have a very successful business there. And as a neighbor, if I could help in any way or form, I would help them. I wish them all very well. But up until 11 o'clock, anything beyond 11 o'clock will cause problem to my family. I have a pregnant wife. We are gonna have a new baby in the next 2 months, and my bedroom is directly above the premises. So I don't want any noise or any problems to cause a stress for us. Like today, you know, I could be going out. I could be doing.
Mr. Ralphie, we understand your passion and your concern, and obviously this is upsetting you, but I really think the members have understood what you're asking us. We've understood why you're asking for that. So I think I'll ask you, unless there's anything extra that you need to say, I think I'll ask you to stop and we'll move on, Mr. Ralphie.
Just one more thing,
please. Thank you so much for your submission.
Yeah, just one more thing, please. Earlier, members touched on Pizza Go-Go. Pizza Go-Go, there is no residential place direct above Pizza Go-Go. On both sides of Pizza Go-Go, there are empty premises. So if there is any noise, or because this is what was mentioned, that there has been no complaint on Pizza Go-Go, because there is no bedroom direct above Pizza Go-Go, and on both sides of Pizza Go-Go there is no residential place.
Mr. Ralphie,
that's why there has been
Mr. Ralphie, please. Pizza Go-Go is not part of this application, and it's not a relevant requirement for us to consider. It's not part of the premises. So we really do need to keep to the premises and the 4 licensing objectives, but we do understand how upset you are about this and your passion. So I'm going to close that now, your submission. I believe that we've had a good understanding of what you wanted to say to us. And I will now move to Mrs. Jardim. Thank you very much, Mr. Ralphie. Just to add that if we were so disposed to grant, this could matter, and there were all those things that you were talking about. This matter can be reviewed, and yourself could ask for this review singularly, and it would be done. That is if we were so disposed to grant. So I will move now on to Mrs. Jardim and ask Mrs. Jardim if you have any questions for the applicant. Thank you.
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardine. Okay, so moving on now, we move on to the summary, and we will ask all parties to summarise, and we will start with the party who spoke last to go first. So, Mr. Rampy,
Yeah.
you have yes.
Sorry, Chair. Could I just ask a question, please?
Who's? Oh, yes, of course, Mrs. Cole. I'm so sorry, I didn't see your hand. Yes, please do. Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey and the applicant, during the submissions that your client was making, he did state that he wasn't particularly looking to sell alcohol from the premises. The alcohol was more he had in mind for delivery, and I just wonder, in view of what you've heard, I appreciate that you didn't have any chance to mediate and speak to the objector before the hearing, but I just wonder if there is anything that you might like to revise, or he'd be prepared to revise, about the alcohol being sold in the premises, or at least after 11 o'clock. I don't know if you were able to take a moment to speak with your client. I know it's difficult online, Chair, but it might be worth us just adjourning for a couple of minutes, maybe. You're on mute, Chair.
Right on mute because I was interfering with your microphone, Mrs. Cole. Yes, I'm more than happy to adjourn for. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes so that Mr. Ramsey can speak with his client, so that it may be possible that we could have a condition there. So we will gather together again at 10 to 12. And Mr. Ramsey, if you'd please speak to your client with regard to the possibility of not selling alcohol from the premises after 11 o'clock at night, which I believe is what Mrs. Cole has put forward. Thank you very much. We'll adjourn now until 10 to 12. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones. So we're back live now to a meeting which is Chicken Club, and we are asking Mr. Ramsey if he would be kind enough to advise us on his conversation with his client about the proposal put forward by Mrs. Cole. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. After discussing it with my client and after him hearing the concerns of Mr. Rowie, my client is willing to limit alcohol sales after 2300 hours to home deliveries only.
Okay. I will just ask, thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. Thank you very much, Mr. McGladster. Members, Councillor Dion and Councillor Decent, are you content with that offer of a condition? Dion?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Decent?
Yes, certainly, Chair. I think it can make a difference.
Okay, thank you. So if we were so disposed to grant, we will certainly consider that as an offer of condition. Thank you very much. There is just one thing which I do want to clarify, if I may, please, Mr. Ramsey or Mr. McGladster might be able to answer me. Mr. Abdullah Ibrahim, who is our DPS, I just wondered if you could tell me a little bit more about him, his experience and his background, and his understanding of the role of DPS for this premise. Thank you.
Yes, I can answer that, Chair. Mr. Ibrahim has got a massive experience in fast food industry and the sale of alcohol. He was a director at California Fried Chicken for many years, and has also now got his own company and has got four operations in the Dorset area, where he has managers and DPSs in these premises. He has agreed to help to assist Mr. McGadzi in the offset of this premises as DPS in the short term, and in the long term, Mr. McGadzi will take over as DPS, as he is going to be working on the premises more regular.
Okay, so in summary then, it's the intention that Mr. Ibrahim will advise and support Mr. McGadzi with a view to Mr. McGadzi becoming DPS, is that correct?
That's correct. Mr. Ibrahim will be the single point of accountability in the short term, but then it will be handed over to Mr. McGadzi. Okay,
thank you very much. Thank you. So now we move on to the summary. And we've covered everybody. Everybody's made their representations. It shows you a little where you come back to. So you now have an opportunity to sum up. So Mr. Ralphie, as our other person, you've heard the condition which has been offered. So if you'd like to sum up with regard to the application and that proposed condition. Thank you, Mr. Ralphie.
Okay, just one point that I would like to add, that I could not afford to have a legal representative here. That's why, you know, I might have spoken in a way that a proper experienced legal representative would not have spoken.
You were absolutely fine, Mr. Ralphie, absolutely fine. No problem at all. Very happy to have heard you.
All right, thank you for that. But all I'm asking is, I wish every business owner a very successful business, but because my bedroom is right above the premises, I just don't want my family to be disturbed time and time again. So I'm asking all members to please give that a really, really good consideration, because you all know more than me how Boscombe is as a whole. So I do not need to say anything else, but in future, I don't want to then keep coming back to you and, you know, allocate a big chunk of my life to deal with this matter, as I know from my 20 years of experience that this is exactly what would happen. The points that I made earlier, yes, it is not regarding to this premises, but the distance difference between the other two premises that have incidents at least on at least twice a week, in terms of meters, the distance is about 15-20 meters. So that's why those incidents that I mentioned is directly relevant to this premises because of the distance, because of the class of people living in Boscombe, and because of the type of area the Boscombe is. I've been living here since 2011. So thank you very much. I don't want to take much of your time. I think I've made my concerns, legitimate concerns, very clear, and now I'll be just waiting to see what the responsible authorities will do and whether they would give it a good consideration or not.
Thank you, Mr. Ralphie. Just to confirm that there is a condition offered on the table that the alcohol will only be for home delivery only after 11 p.m. So it would not be able to be purchased from the premises directly, only for home delivery. If that gives you some comfort, that's on the table, that's for our consideration. Thank you very much, Mr. Ralphie. And at no stage did you say anything untoward. It's always very difficult, but you're becoming rather passionate, and we needed just to calm things down a little to understand better what you were trying to say to us. So thank you, Mr. Ralphie. So Mr. Ramsey, your opportunity now to sum up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, you will note that both Dorset Police and Environmental Health have had the opportunity to examine the application at length and are satisfied that the conditions and times offered will ensure that if adhered to, that the premises will in no way add to the existing antisocial behaviour in this area of Boscombe, especially directly outside the premises. After hearing the representation from Mr. Ralphie, my client is happy to limit the sale of alcohol after 2300 hours to home deliveries, and we believe that hopefully in some way will allay Mr. Ralphie's fears, and we would again respectfully request that you look favourably on this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. And Mr. McGladser, your opportunity to sum up. Thank you.
I'm trying to, figure a way that all parties can be happy. And I'm just a bit upset, that I even got objected in the first place, if I'm honest. And I would just, this antisocial behaviour outside this is Boscombe. It's not the greatest place in the UK, and there is, stuff going on outside all the time in Clearview. And the objective party, they've lived here they said since 2008 or 11, and they've probably seen their fair share of, negative stuff in the street. But what I was going to say, me having my doors open for the people which come from the bars or even just bystanders walking past, it's less nuisance and noise activity outside. And, they sober up by eating food, drinking coffee or fizzy drinks. And obviously I said I'm happy to not sell alcohol inside from 11 o'clock. So actually it takes more trouble from the outside to come inside, but that's just where they come, relax, sober up and eat food. Like I said, I'm happy to call a taxi as well for them. So realistically, I'm being a little bit more, in my view, I feel like I'm a little bit more responsible, because that's the first thing drunk people do after they coke up, they eat. And after they eat, they sober up, and what do they do after? They get a taxi and go home. Instead of fighting outside and all this stuff. And on a Friday, Saturday, I'm pretty sure both Moroids and Mellow Bar have security. And I have my staff as well. If anything goes wrong, we're happy to call the police straight away. But on a Friday, Saturday night, you always hear sirens, regardless, in Boscombe anyway. So after 11 years, or since 2008 or 11, we would have thought you would be used to the sirens and negativity. I'm just going to bring less to it outside his door, if anything.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McGladser. We're very grateful for your offered condition, and we shall certainly consider it in our deliberations. Thank you very much. And lastly, Mrs. Jardim, thank you very much, Mr. Gladster. And Mrs. Jardim, do you have any summary, or are you content?
I am content. I have nothing else to add.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jobin. So thank you very much, everybody, for a very, very useful discussion and debate, and for the offer conditions and the clarity that was given. Extremely grateful to everybody present for their help and assistance. So I'll now conclude the hearing, and the subcommittee will now adjourn in private with our legal advisor, Mrs. Cole, and our clerk, Mrs. Coulter, to deliberate. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day in which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, and that's today's date. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate, and I will ask our legal advisor, Mrs. Cole, please to explain the right of appeal. Thank you, Mrs. Cole.
Thank you, Chair. There will be a right of appeal to whatever decision is made later this morning. That appeal should be made to Dorset Magistrates Court within 21 days of formal notification of the decision made.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cole. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance today and your contributions. We will now formally deliberate, and I will ask Mr. Jones if he will complete our live stream. Thank you, Mr. Jones, and thank you, everybody.